45 minutes. I'm going to try to, I'll shorten a couple of the slides. If there's anything that I'm talking about, that I'm getting into a subject, if there's anything you'd like to know a little bit more about, please just go ahead and shoot up a hand, let me know. But before I start, so let me see, what's a good question to ask? How many people have done an open source audit? So Bob has. And
I'm Tom Lyden with Navtech.
With Navtech, okay. Great. Does everybody understand what an audit is? Does everybody, I'm getting nods, okay, this person's saying no. Okay, most people know what it is. Okay, well, my job at OpenLogic is to manage the group that does open source audits for our customers. And just a little bit about OpenLogic. If you get a chance afterwards, we'd love to talk to you. We have a booth out here. So OpenLogic's mission in life is to help enterprises to safely and securely use open source. And we provide a number of different products and services behind that. Our services include helping organizations develop open source policies. Obviously, we do open source audits. That's what I do. We'll help with license obligation analysis. So not only will we help you discover what open source you have, what your organization has, we'll help you understand what the obligations of those licenses are and what's required to comply. And we also supply a service called open source fulfillment. So if you have an organization that ships a lot of products with open source and there are source code fulfillment, there's attribution requirements, etc., we can help you with that. From a products point of view, we provide scanning tools. So if you've developed the expertise or choose to develop the expertise within your organization to do the scanning yourself, you can use our tools, you can purchase our tools. And we also offer, in the platform that delivers our scanning tools, OpenLogic Exchange is a software as a service platform, and within that is a set of open source governance tools which will help you manage your policies, manage request approval of open source, and obviously manage audits. And then finally, we offer open source technical support, service level contract support on over 500 open source products. So what is an open source audit? Let me just start there. The question is, when you develop some code and it's not 100% proprietary, and the non-proprietary code that you've put in there has come from some source outside of your organization, what is it? And what we specialize in at OpenLogic is helping you find primarily open source, but during audits we'll also identify code that's not yours, and we'll help put a label on that. Is it freeware? Is it shareware? Is it proprietary third-party code that you have under a commercial license? And under what licenses? And when you do an audit, hopefully you're going to get some valuable information that you'll be able to leverage out of that audit. The audit will include the list, or what we call bill of materials of the packages, of the open source packages that are in that product. A bill of materials of what licenses, and now we'll get into this a lot more later, but licenses are not always clear cut. It's not always just a BSD license, or just an Apache license, or just a GNU General Public license. And a complete list of requirements for compliance. So when you acquire software, I would say, and Bob Suter mentioned this yesterday, but when you license a product, let's say from Oracle, quite often there's license negotiation. Your lawyers will be involved, or your salespeople will be involved, your purchasing people will be involved. And you'll discuss the terms under which you use that software. And the lawyers are involved, and you make sure that you comply most of the time. However, with open source, we've found ourselves in a state today where open source has come into our product through the years, and not only do we not know it's there, but we may be out of compliance with the terms of usage of those licenses. So an audit can supply you not only the licenses, but it can help you understand what your requirements are and help you understand how to comply. Oh, and one last item is conflicting terms. And I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but the Free Software Foundation has a section that they talk about licenses that are compatible with the GNU General Public License and the LGPL license. And what they talk about is terms in other licenses that conflict with GPL specifically. And what we see when we do audits is we inevitably see sets of terms that you can't combine the software and meet the terms of both licenses and be in compliance with both licenses. So an audit will also help you understand if there's any conflicting terms. So why would you need an audit? And I think that, again, I'm going to mention Bob because I really appreciated his talk yesterday morning if you were able to attend the keynote in the morning. Back to my point about if you're using Oracle, you wouldn't want to not comply with their license in the commercial use of a product that you're spending a lot of money with. Part of the audit is understanding what you have because you need to support it. You need to understand where it came from. You need to understand its implications in terms of your code. You obviously want to comply with your internal open source policies. Many times we'll be involved in doing audits where people will come in. They don't care so much what they have in terms of a complete list. They want to know that they don't have anything of a particular license. So they'll come into us and they'll say, please do this audit. Let us know if there's any GPL code. Because we have a strict policy that says we don't allow GPL. And we want to make sure our developers didn't bring it in by accident or without our knowledge. Obviously, you need to comply with the license. As we learned yesterday again from the keynote, litigation is a real risk. I would say 4 or 5 years ago, it was, there was much less activity that we saw in terms of the Free Software Foundation or the SFLC, the Software Freedom Law Center, bringing suits against people, but we're seeing a lot more of that today. So there's a lot more precedent. So that risk level has elevated. And then one of the things that I've learned just in the last couple of years doing these audits is a little bit, I'm not a lawyer, so I'll put that disclaimer out, is that there's a body of law around copyright. And we're probably most familiar as Americans in the United States, we're most familiar with the battles that we've seen around music, right? And of course plagiarism and things like that. And there's certain rights under US law that are given to us when we create a body of work. And those protect software. So a lot of times when we bring in code, open source code or free code, and use it in our product, whether it has an explicit license or not, there still is a body of law that will protect the rights of the person who created that product initially. So you want to be aware of that. You just want to be aware of that. The product that you're developing influences or has implications for your customers, has implications if you're selling the product, if your company is being acquired. So it's far-reaching. And as awareness of open source grows, we see more and more that our customers, right, the people who are acquiring our products, people who are using our products, our partners, et cetera, are now starting to ask the question, what open source do you have? And are you in compliance? So it's a concern. So when do you need an audit? And this is what I was just touching on. If you have a commercial product, if you're distributing a product and you have any open source in it, and you're not fully aware of what that open source is, it's a great idea to get an audit. If you're in an organization that may be acquired, if it's an organization that's going to change hands, whether you're the buyer or whether you're the seller, if you have an organization that you're putting on the block, it may be a good thing, especially if you've got software assets, to have a complete list of your open source and the compliance steps you've taken, because it'll grease the skids in an acquisition. And if you're an acquiring party, you definitely want to know from a liability perspective what compliance steps the company you're purchasing has taken. Financing. This is becoming extremely common now. VC is going in and they're asking for audits as a condition of capital investments. And then OEM and distribution deals. And we saw that loud and clear January before last. Software Freedom Law Center filed a lawsuit with BusyBox, and a number of consumer products manufacturers had embedded BusyBox in their products. And I think that the truth behind that was that many of them were completely unaware, and they were caught without knowledge of what was going on. So it's important to understand these things. So open source realities. Adoption rates, as we saw, you know, in the keynote yesterday, open source is pretty much ubiquitous now. We put these slides together just a few months ago, and this was kind of some data that we had from Gartner. But I think it's extremely difficult for an organization to develop software in today's world without having at least some open source or some freeware or some third-party product slipping into their product. It's downloaded, and a lot of times we have this conception that it's a very clean type of transaction, that you know, I'm going to use my developer's going to use some project from Apache. So they go to the Apache Software Foundation, they download it. It's just not that clean. What happens is they're trying to figure out how to develop a dialog box, and someone's developed some, you know, has some great code out on a blog somewhere, and they've put it under the, you know, Creative Commons share-alike license or something like that. So you see these types of things come in from all different sources. Open source is in third-party products, and open source is bundled in open source. So another big misnomer is that I go and I download a tool called AspectJ under the Eclipse public license, and that's what I have and that's what I comply to. You take Eclipse and you download it, you take a look at it, and all of a sudden you see that Eclipse has additional components in it that are under BSD, MIT, etc.